Hello everyone, great to see such a packed audience. Um, what I want to talk to you today about is digital safety files and particularly how we can use those post-handover and in life cycle asset management. Just to set the scene in terms of what we're trying to achieve at the end of a project. And if you consider the amount of information that's collected, exchanged and gathered throughout the whole life cycle of a project, you can see the scope of the work we're trying to cover. Everything from the initial design and conception stage right through to construction, project handover, and then following on into demolition, possibly 25, 35 years down the road. Traditionally, the handover of documentation at the end of a construction project in the past has been a paper copy. Thankfully, we've gone away from the mess that's on the, depending on which way you're looking, the left-hand side or the right-hand side of the screen over there. But we're still a long way from full, proper digital safety files in our view. Currently, we're seeing a huge move away from paper into soft copy or digital, but the problem in a lot of cases is that soft copy turns out to be a collection of PDF files onto a CD or DVD, and in many cases that's probably a worse nightmare than the paper copy in the first place. But we want to try and achieve, and we're doing that on most of the projects that we're working on at the moment, is to transform that collection of information into a digital asset that the building owner can use for the next 25 to 30 years of occupation in a building. A true digital safety file should be a building manual, just more than the statutory requirement for a safety file, which encompasses just the operating and maintenance information on the operating and maintenance of the building. A true safety file, we believe, should go beyond that into asset management, life cycle management, and the like. In looking at what we're going to achieve at the end of construction and into FM and handover, we need to start considering what the owner wants from a project. When you consider the fact that it costs 5 times more to operate and maintain a building over its life cycle than it costs to build in the first place, you can start to see the benefit and the value in achieving good results from the handover documentation. Typically, the other wheel of information, when you look at what's handed over on a construction project, the use that building owners put that information through, it's more than just operating and maintenance information. It can be space management, life cycle costs, capital asset management, and so on. Once we get into looking at handover documentation and its use after construction, we need to start considering what the maintenance needs of the project are and what's the profile of the people using the information. And in a lot of cases, although the projects are being constructed in a BIM environment using 3D modelling, the FM team are not necessarily BIM experienced. They're also working on many different cases on a daily basis, probably still using paper-based systems. So we need to be conscious of that as we start to consider what use we can make of a digital safety file. Looking at the engagement with the maintenance team at a very early stage, and preferably during the design and construction of the project. What are they going to use the data for? What data do they want? More importantly, what systems are they going to use if they're using a digital system for managing the assets and the maintenance on the project. In looking at this whole area, one of the areas that we've got a lot of good information from is Sandia Laboratories in Albuquerque in New Mexico. It's a campus development with about 700 buildings, over 14,000 acres, with an occupancy of about 10,000 people. So they have a huge experience in terms of using the information that's handed over and managing a large building stock. The FM manager on the project, when asked about the value and what information he's currently getting, expressed severe concerns about the lack of information that's been handed over at the end of the project, handed over in a usable form. For example, lack of information in terms of how to operate and not how to operate, but how to maintain equipment can delay the instigation of that maintenance, and that in turn will affect the service life of the equipment. So it can cut service life by a year or two if they don't start maintaining the equipment at an early stage on a project. Some of the experiences he's had was that the DFM guys hadn't told the contractor what information they wanted. The installation contractor doesn't understand everything, and in many cases it can take 6 to 8 months to load that information into their CAFM system. Again, contributing to a drop-off in terms of the operational use of the building. He believes that FM should have an early involvement on the project, and we're finding that same experience. If we can get the FM guys involved at an early stage on the project, things like asset tagging of equipment could probably start taking place during the construction phase, which is a bonus for the building owner rather than having to face that as he takes over the building. One of the interesting things that Steve Fodder explained was that they're well used to operating and maintaining standard equipment. It's the special equipment, the new technologies, that gives them the biggest problem. As he says himself, when they find out that one of their buildings got a LEED or some sort of an architectural award, they begin to realise that possibly they're now faced with equipment that they haven't been used to before. So the documentation needs on that are far greater. One of the other stats that came out of that survey or study of the 700 buildings is the loss that they're incurring on an annual basis in terms of getting the right information to be able to execute work orders. And that applies to about 60% of the work orders. Trying to find the information needed to carry out a repair on a pump or something like that is costing somewhere in the region of €3.50, that's in Irish terms, €3.50 per square metre of construction on an annual basis. FM teams tend to spend about 20% of their time in the documentation system looking for information, trying to find information to service and maintain the equipment. The turnover, and that was an interesting stat to be able to put it in terms of the actual turnover of a company, and suggesting that 5% of the turnover could be saved, or the equivalent of 5% of the turnover could be saved if they have an efficient information management system. From our point of view, the other interesting stat was that 1 to 5% could be saved if there was a user-friendly front end provided on the handover information system. So information as an asset. We see that as important an asset as the actual equipment itself. It's got to answer many questions in terms of the operating and maintenance of the building. I'm moving fast through this at the moment, I know, because I'm conscious of the time. So, for information to be properly useful, it needs to be structured data, and it needs to be built in a classification system so that when it's delivered, it's of a consistent nature to the building owner. There's a lot of talk in terms of information and being put into Revit or put into 3D models or collected by various different people. But the problem with a lot of cases of that nature is that you end up with duplicated data. And duplicated data leads to mistakes and out-of-date information in one or two places. So in all of our work, what we're trying to do is make sure that information or data is linked and not duplicated. So you're trying to connect different silos of information rather than duplicating the information in the one place. Also to try and make sure that we don't suffer an information overload. There's so much information available, as I said at an earlier stage, that we're in danger if we're not careful with a building owner of dumping a huge amount of information onto the building owner. Interestingly enough, I think about a year ago, at one of the CitA events in the on the Wednesday morning sessions, I think Grange Gorman noted a point where they were presented with a huge amount of information 2 years ago, 3 years ago, on one of the large projects out in Grange Gorman. That much information that, in fact, that they haven't managed to use it. It's still sitting in the drawer or in a cabinet unused because they're afraid of the information that may be in there that they're not aware of. So we need to be careful about the information we give across to building owners. We should try and structure it in a way so that we get some form of information requirement from the building owner. As again, back to the Albuquerque example, his point was that there's no point in spending an awful lot of information collecting and delivering information if that information is not going to be usable in the first case. I'm going to flip past Kobe because again I'm conscious on time, but that's probably the most structured or definitive means of communicating and exchanging information that we're aware of at the moment. It's the only standard that's out there that gives some form of understanding of the information to be exchanged or passed across. The problem with it is that building owners are not being questioned and asked or brought into the equation in terms of what information they want in Kobe, and because of that they simply say, I want Kobe. They get a whole lot of information that's not of practical use to them, and it's presented in a way that again they're faced with this information overload. So I'm moving again fast through this. I'm going to skip past this, but again it's tied into getting information out of one system to transfer it into another, not naming the information properly. If we can get employers to put forward a proper information requirement document so that we know exactly what they want, we can then deliver the information to them in the format that they want that information. Getting into defining what they want. Do they want information about performance? Do they want fire ratings? Do they want serial numbers? All of that is valuable in terms of collecting the information during the course of construction. Understanding how much information they want in the 3D model compared to how much information they want in connected databases. Trying to understand the various different phases of information and the way it's exchanged throughout the life cycle of a project. So for example, at the early design stage, we need to have a lot more graphical information than data information within the communications that we have with the building owner, because we're trying to paint a picture of what the building is going to be like when it's finished. As we move into construction, I go back, I can go back, probably can't go back. If we went into construction, that graphical information reduces until we get to the point where it's more data that's needed on the project. Moving into use cases and where we can get value from a digital safety file. Having everything in one place, all the documentation at your fingertips, all the assets, all the drawings. Again, if you're looking for information on the heating system on the building, to be able to go to one place and get all that information, and giving it in a user-friendly format. If you remember, 1 to 5% of turnover can be saved if we present the information in a usable format. Providing a search engine in the system so that people can find the information they want at the flick of a switch and get it presented on the system very quickly and very easily. Providing a full asset register, so everything that they need. And we heard earlier today from Anand and Bimishore about the digital twin that they want to build on a typical project. But having all that information sitting in an asset database that the building owner can pick from and use is valuable. Taking warranties and collecting or producing a schedule of warranties on a project, so that again that the building owner has that full list of warranties and knows how to access those if a plant and equipment goes into trouble during the course of the warranty. Extracting from the information is handed over, a full maintenance schedule and regime, so the building owner, as soon as he takes possession of the building, has a full schedule of what warranty he needs to carry out, whether it's on the green roof, to the BMS, to the ventilation system. He has a very clear and concise schedule of all the warranties, all the maintenance that he needs to carry out on his building in one place. And that overcomes the problem that the guys in Albuquerque were experiencing in taking 2 to 3 months to upload that information into a maintenance application. Okay, life cycle. I'm just going to move forward. In fact, I'm probably out of time completely, am I? Yeah, sorry. So I'll wrap up quickly going through it. Space planning, we talked about that earlier. Operating and maintenance instructions and information. One of the interesting things we found in that, in terms of building owners, large property owners wanting to have their building ready for sale as they take occupation of it. One large REIT believes that having proper information on a building can save 2 to 3 weeks in terms of the sale process on a building. Life cycle asset management, to be able to predict a 25-year sinking fund requirement on a project and graph that out in terms of how the building is performing. QR codes. We didn't get near building information modelling and 3D modelling, but the ability to be able to connect safety files up, so you can click on an object, go straight from the 3D model into the documentation system on the job. One last thing, and then I'll get off. The biggest thing that we've seen, the biggest change that we've experienced in this whole area is the use of 3D viewers. One of the reluctance, or the main reluctance we've seen on the part of building owners in terms of accessing information in a 3D model is the difficulty that they can experience in trying to navigate a 3D model using a mouse or something like that. If you're not experienced in doing it, it can be frustrating to try and get through a 3D model. We've now started to integrate a system where you can use a set of 2D plans, zone in on or zoom in on the area of the 2D plan that you want, drop your finger on an iPad, and then straight away get a 3D view of the area you're in from the 2D plan. You want to move to a different part of the building or zoom pan around, you move to different parts of the building, all just from a 2D plan. So that, once we started to introduce that changed the whole game. That plus augmented reality, to be able to see above ceilings or behind walls and see what information is there. So I'm out of it. So I better stop at this stage. Sorry about that. I thought I might have had more. Okay, thanks.